Hey everyone, it's the Miserable Movie Man back again with my latest video. And this time, I'm boldly going where no man and no one has gone before. This video will be in defense of the largely indefensible Star Trek V and 5 reasons why it's not as bad as everyone thinks.
That's not true! That's impossible!
So, Star Trek V has the lowest score on Rotten Tomatoes, both critically and audience-wise. Pretty much panned by everyone I know, especially my friends who are Trekkers, also don't enjoy it either. And even though there are newly rebooted films, they're all still more highly rated than Star Trek V. Before we get into the 5 reasons, I have to give a little bit of context and background.
This is gonna take a while.
Star Trek V came out in 1989 and for a brief period took the top spot away from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which is my personal favorite Indiana Jones film, I have to say. But it also had to compete with Batman, Ghostbusters 2, License to Kill, and Lethal Weapon 2. So, I mean, when you stack all that up, I think there's no wonder that it really failed to make the box office that people expected it to.
It never had a chance.
It started off with production problems, huge SFX cuts. Obviously, ILM was supposed to be doing the effects as they did in the previous films, but they were too busy with Ghostbusters 2 and I think Indiana Jones as well. So it really started off on a bad foot. Shatner was actually a good director and everyone enjoyed working with him. Even George Takei, who notoriously hates William Shatner, said he had a great time working with Shatner as the director on this project.
William Shatner, amazing.
And of course, Shatner was given the director's role as part of the Favored Nations clause that he had in his contract, where whenever anything happened for Leonard Nimoy, the equivalent would go to William Shatner. So because Nimoy got to direct 3 and 4, Shatner was given the chance to direct 5. And yes, Star Trek V did have a lot of stupid bits, like Uhura's fan dance, which started out as a joke by the writer, but somehow actually made it in there.
I can't believe they did that.
And I mentioned the SFX were bad, and ILM was supposed to do them. But not only were they ridiculously bad for this film, but even then, the corporation that were given the FX to do were given half the normal time to do it with less than half the budget. To his credit, William Shatner did have grandiose plans for the film. He wanted a huge end battle with rock creatures, and then they would descend into the 10 levels of hell, a la Dante's Inferno. But he couldn't get almost any of that, so he made do with what he had. I think there was some test footage shot with a rock monster that was supposed to blow smoke, but it was so bad that they actually just skipped the whole sequence entirely. And in another case of Star Trek art imitating life, in 1989 there was going to be a shot of Mount Rushmore with an African-American female president, but they didn't have the time or the budget to do that either, so that was scrapped. And in this current American presidential climate, it could be quite prescient, as Star Trek often tends to be.
That's spooky.
Other things is Shatner did not want Cyborg as Spock's half-brother. He thought that was a bit of a cheap cop-out. They actually wanted Sean Connery to play the character, who they couldn't get, obviously with Indiana Jones, and so they made a little trivia. They made the Vulcan name of heaven sound a bit like Sean Connery in terms of Shakari. Also, I think Shatner shot over 2 hours of footage, but Harve Bennett wanted it cut to hour 45, and Shatner was horrified at the cuts. But one little cool bit is this is the first on-screen appearance, I believe, of the Starfleet Marines, where, I think they were theorized before, or maybe even Gene Roddenberry mentioned it, but you don't actually see them on screen until the assault on the capital of Nimbus 3. And also, some cool bits where, Spock nerve pinches a horse. We have a version of pool, but with water. I have no idea how no one has made this water pool into real life. It looked pretty cool. I think that would be an interesting thing to do.
You crazy?
So what I was trying to get at really with that piece is that Shatner really did have a grand vision of Star Trek V, and he was hampered by so many interferences from budget cuts to studios to producers, etc., that I think we're doing him a disservice in saying he's a bad director. I mean, if you look at some of those opening shots, they're really quite brilliant, to be honest. And especially some of the later shots where they have the observation deck, which is a really cool feature that they added. So I want to start off by a little bit of defense of William Shatner himself. I would have loved to see his version. I'd love to see the full version with all the special effects. And the plot was quite interesting as well. So with all that said, and again, rambling long intro similar to my Superman 2 video where I talk about Richard Lester's cut. If you haven't seen that, check out. There'll be a link in the video soon.
Just get on with it.
I want to get on to 5 reasons why I don't think Star Trek 5 is as bad as everyone says it is. And to this day, if it's on TV, I will certainly watch it. Same can't be said for some of the newer Star Trek films. But, here we go. Reason number 1, Star Trek 5 deals with mental health long before mental health became such a huge thing. Cyborg as a character comes over and he takes away people's pain. And now after taking it away, obviously people tend to follow him. But what's brilliant about the film is Kirk sees through all of this. Yes, Cyborg uses his Vulcan power slightly differently. And everyone does carry a great pain. I'm pretty sure I haven't met anyone who doesn't have some kind of trauma that they've experienced. So in that respect, that mental health aspect, which is so critical in today's society, was precursored in Star Trek, which was great to see.
Nailed it again!
Of course, you have the brilliant piece of acting by Shatner and himself where he talks about how Kirk needs his pain. He wants his pain. The pain is what makes him who he is. And he tells Spock that there's no miracle cure. I think he tells Bones that there's no miracle cure, which is great to see that they understood mental health well enough that, you really need years of therapy to kind of get through it. There's no magic quick fix that will help. But obviously Bones, he actually succumbs to the pain and he has to, he was initially, I think, going to join Cyborg. But because he's there with the other two, he has to follow them. If he was by himself, I think that would have been a different scenario. And I thought the acting in this scene was stellar from all 3 of them, really stellar. Seeing, DeForest Kelly's performance, I think that's his best performance he's had in any Star Trek film, where he talks about his father.
Now, see, that's acting.
It's beautiful to watch. And then Spock perfectly plays the, element of him really pushing his Vulcan side, where he tries to be emotionless and he talks about how Cyborg doesn't really understand him properly. And then, of course, Kirk doesn't even want to go near that. He doesn't even want to go near his pain. He doesn't want to confront it. He says he needs it. And the way he's sympathetic to the others. Some of the best acting in any Star Trek film to date, in my opinion. Reason number 2. I think it's really great seeing these 3 together. I could watch them all day. Kirk, Spock, and McCoy have such a perfect chemistry and a perfect camaraderie, and this film has the most number of scenes of all of them. So the huge focus on that triangular relationship between them is what, to me, is a huge selling point of the film. Bones is a great foil to Spock. Jim seems so comfortable with them. It's kind of like, settling into your favorite pair of slippers or sitting in a comfortable armchair. It's wonderful to watch these 3 on screen. And
warm, fuzzy feeling inside.
Seeing them at the campfire, seeing them in the Enterprise, seeing them, at the end when they go together. It's brilliant to watch. I just enjoy all of the discussions and the banter, where Spock doesn't know row your boat, and he says to Bones later on, he knows the classics, and Bones says, well, how come you don't know row your boat? Just little quips like that make this a great film for me in terms of the chemistry between the 3 leads and seeing so much of it. Also, Jim was right in a way. He predicts that if those 2 are by his side, he's not going to die, which essentially is what happens throughout the film, and plays itself out in Star Trek Generations, where he dies. I mean, I think Picard is there, but Spock and McCoy weren't there. So again, a prescient moment in a Star Trek film, but really love seeing these 3 together on screen as much as possible. 3, I think this is the most physical James T. Kirk you'll see. I mean, it's become a meme and a parody of how physical he was in the show, but even I think either Chekhov or Sulu, Walter Koenig, or George Takei brought a comment that, you know, Shatner loves to run around and be physical. And in this film, he does all of it. He rides horses, he climbs mountain, punches and throws bad guys.
I am almost exhausted.
I mean, Kirk really does get back to doing what he does best, I mean, apart from cheating death, which is showing that he still has the physical chops to be the most feared warrior in the galaxy. Even the Klingons think so. I mean, just defeating Kirk makes them the strongest warrior in the galaxy. And it is also the most Kirk you will see Kirk as, because for all of his sort of mannerisms and quips in the previous films, you cannot get a more James T. Kirk line than questioning God. That is a genius part of the film, where everyone around is stunned to see this potentially mythical figure, this deity there, and James T. Kirk will just say, excuse me, what does God need with a starship? God damn it, Jim, you don't question the Almighty who asks for his ID.
That's rubbish.
So those, the way that those characters played out, and having Kirk reveal so much about himself as well, how he needs his pain, how he loves his friends, how he questions. I think you see the most sides of James T. Kirk's character in this film, including not just his fears, but his prejudices as well. So it was great to see so much of Kirk, great to see him so physical. Really enjoyed seeing him in this film. Number 4, I kind of alluded to this at the start of the commentary. This is an ambitious film that does fall short. It does fall far short of what it's trying to convey, but I admire and I commend them for their ambition. This had all the ideas for a great Star Trek film. I mean, you have Nimbus 3, an experimental planet. The 3 major races are trying to find peace and common ground in Paradise City. A mysterious Vulcan with powers. I mean, the Enterprise really does go boldly where no one has gone before. You have a godlike entity that, a little bit of trivia, was put there by the Q Continuum, apparently.
I did not know that.
Yes, it changes a few things, like the Great Barrier being at the center of the universe instead of the edge. But, I mean, for a Star Trek-esque Star Trek plot, this was certainly more Star Trek than I think 3 and 4 were, just in terms of what they were dealing with. You have a showdown there, you have a Klingon bird of prey, loads of cool stuff, loads of ambition, loads of great potential Star Trek material. I thought it was, something that they were shooting from the moon, they didn't get there, but if Shatner was able to get more of what he wanted to do, VFX, if the raid at the start was done better, if the showdown at the end looked better, I mean, in the end they settled on that image of the actor playing God as the face, but they wanted all kinds of things. They wanted to show an image of Satan. They didn't get all of that. But I really admire what they were trying to do. I really admire what Shatner was trying to do. He was trying to tell a grand old story in the true Star Trek tradition, and very similar to Gene Roddenberry's stories about deities that he wanted to do before, that the studio wouldn't let him do. So actually a lot of his disappointment, disapproval of this film was down to the fact that some of Shatner's ideas were ideas that he'd originally had that he wasn't allowed to do.
God, that's such a shame.
And also, I think in this film, you have to give credit for Luckenbill's performance as Cyborg. I thought he was really good as Cyborg. He really sells the role. And even Spock at the end with his line, "Damn you, sir, you will try." Threw in a little oomph with Spock's character, just in terms of his usual logical demeanor. So all the ambitions and those little traits, for me, is very commendable for the film, and one reason why I enjoy it more than others. And then finally, the humor. This is the final piece. Not everyone finds this film funny. I personally do. I think some jokes hit a little bit wide of the mark, but generally I find this a funnier film than most of the others. Again, going back to the chemistry and the camaraderie, it's great to see it, and it plays out in jokes. Just, even in the raid in Nimbus 3, Spock says, "Hold your horse, Jim."
Now that's funny.
So the obvious jokes work great. I don't think they seem too forced, and there are a lot of subtle jokes in there too. There's a joke that didn't quite land where Shatner gives his jacket to his daughter Melanie, who's the yeoman on the bridge, and she kind of wanders around the bridge trying to find a place to hang the jacket, which there obviously isn't. But that was in there as a subtle joke. When Kirk is in the brig, he sits on the toilet, which has a little sign saying you can't use it in space dock, and that gives a clue to how waste is handled in the ship. A little nod to all the labels on Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. Even the line where Kirk's in the lift and he says, turbo lift, and he says, "I could use a shower," and Spock looks at him and just says, "Yes." There is a lot of good humor in this film, and for me, a lot of it landed. When I was a kid, I did laugh out loud at Scotty hitting his head, saying he knows the ship like the back of his hand.
That's not funny.
As I get older, it's a bit less funny, more of a nostalgia feel.
Pointless nostalgia.
But again, I find the jokes work pretty well. There is an in-joke that didn't quite make it, which I think was maybe in the screenplay of the novelization, about the fact that Spock calls marshmallows marshmelons. Dr. McCoy has reprogrammed the computer to give Spock this obvious error, which Spock did not pick up, which is why at the start of the campfire scene, McCoy and Kirk find it quite amusing, and by the end of it, I think Spock says the right words because he's figured out what McCoy's doing. So they did inject, I think, a lot of solid humor in this film, and the humor was well placed. It didn't seem, other than Scotty hitting his head, it didn't seem hugely forced or hugely unintentional. So I certainly enjoyed that aspect of it. So there you go. I have 5 reasons in defense of Star Trek V, and as to why I still think it's a watchable film. As I said at the start, not the best film by any means.
You don't say.
But for me, certainly not the worst film. I wasn't a huge fan of Nemesis or Insurrection or Beyond. For me, those 3 are worse than this film. Again, largely because of the familiarity with Kirk and Spock and McCoy, and just watching the 3 of them on screen is brilliant. I love it. And I think this is a film that gets a bad rep. I think if people knew a little bit more of the story behind it, they might give it a bit of more of a pass. You really can't excuse those poor special effects. But I read a comment on another video saying Star Trek V is like pizza. Even if it's bad pizza, it's still pizza.
I like pizza. Everybody loves pizza.
Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you agree with my reasons? Do you have other reasons why you enjoyed this film? Or do you think, similar to the critics and the audience scores, that this is pretty bad? And if so, tell me why you think that's the case. I'll be happy to read that. Thanks for listening. As always, like, share, and subscribe, and catch you in the next one.